I don't mean to call Toronto or Ottawa or Brampton out. It's just that's where the cases are. If they want to roll it back from 100, they have the authority to do that. They know they have the authority to do it. And if they feel comfortable in doing it, God bless them.
As you just heard there, Ontario Premier Doug Ford is telling mayors they have the authority to lower the number of people allowed at social gatherings or change any other COVID-19 restrictions they think are appropriate. That comes after some regions of Ontario have seen a spike in cases over the long weekend. Those spikes caused the province to pause its reopening plans for 1 month, but could increased cases lead to a rollback of reopening or loosening of restrictions in some regions. Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie joins us from her city to talk about just that. Patrick Brown joins us from Brampton. He's the mayor of that city. Thanks very much to both of you for making some time for us this evening. Really appreciate it. Mayor Brown, let me start with you because you heard the Premier mention Brampton there. First of all, are you concerned about the cases in your city, in your jurisdiction? And second, are you considering changing restrictions?
Well, absolutely. I am concerned. We've seen the numbers creep up. My concerns have centered around some of the support that I believe we need to battle COVID-19. In terms of going it on our own municipally, I do think having regional approaches is important because you have multiple municipalities within a few kilometers of each other, and having different rules for North Etobicoke or Malton and Mississauga and East Brampton would be very confusing for residents given how interconnected they are.
Yeah, it's a good point, Mayor Crombie. I saw you kind of nodding there. I started to think, hey, if I were living in Toronto and I could gather with 40 people, but if I live in Brampton, I can only gather with 20, and then I move over to Mississauga and it's fine if I'm with 100. That is a bit of a patchwork effect that could be difficult, I think, to govern or even to sort of live within. What is your take on that approach? Should it be provincial? Should it be regional?
Well, we asked for a regional approach previously, so we do know that there are some health units that don't have any cases. The reality is what Mayor Brown has said is this virus knows no borders, and people live and work seamlessly right across the GTHA. That said, we've been averaging about 10 cases per week. Last week it was 7, etc. We even had a few days where we had 0 cases. So we know a lot more about this virus today than we did in March. And we also knew that with phase 3, there would be a lot more risk of transmission. So we see that in workplaces, and we're now hoping for the best in schools. We know that about 70% of cases and new cases are community transmission. Previously, about 25% had been institutional, and there is a small percentage, about 7%, that is travel related as well. So I, in fact, have asked that we break out the community transmission from households and large social gatherings and be aware how many are workplace related, and that, at least when they're workplace related, we can confine them, we can control them, we can do the contact tracing, and we can isolate it. And that's the experience that we have seen so far.
Mayor Brown, based on the same sort of things that Mayor Crombie flags there, what you've seen in your community, do you think, and I know anything is possible, but do you think that we have come far enough with contact tracing, with testing, that you might not ever have to go back to the level of restrictions, even if cases do rise, that we saw a few months ago? Or do you have, I know you've raised concerns, for example, about testing in the past. Are you worried that you might have to go there?
Well, I certainly think every option needs to be on the table. And if we see numbers spike beyond where we can contact trace, then I think some of those restrictions would be appropriate. But right now, what we really need, we needed a second assessment center because the wait times for testing were far too long. We got approval for that today, and so I'm grateful for the provincial government. But we also need to get test results back sooner. Like right now, we have to ship our test results to Toronto. It takes days instead of hours. If we could do it locally like they do in Mississauga and Toronto and Ottawa, it would, there's too many people out there not knowing if they're COVID positive or not, and that creates a risk.
Mayor Crombie, have you been able to get results fairly quickly, and do you think that's made a difference in your community?
Well, I think so. We test over 1,000 people per day, and we are able to get tests back fairly quickly. Mississauga, we've made great strides, and I think we're really contained the virus. It would be a shame to roll back businesses, but I would encourage people not to expand their social bubbles. I know during the summer, people wanted to get outside, they wanted to meet with their friends, and we could see that there was an uptick in numbers. So let's let's encourage people not to expand those social circles, to keep those group gatherings smaller. And in fact, when you are in a group, notwithstanding if you're outside or indoors, please be sure to keep that safe physical distance and wear your face covering.
Yeah, let's dig into that for a second, Mayor Brown, and in particular, like where you see the transmission in your community. I think, for example, of the city that I live in, Ottawa, where the public health officials today said it's actually, the cases aren't coming from businesses. They're not even coming from restaurants or gyms. In fact, the majority of them are coming from gatherings that are bigger than they should be, basically. People gathering in their homes with people are going to, it happened in a cottage here, you know, where one case turned into 40, I think it is. So in your community, Mayor Brown, what are you seeing and what is your message to people who live in Brampton?
Well, there's two factors here. One, we certainly do have some workplace clusters. We have one in Peel Region that's resulted in 64 cases, many of them from Brampton. And you know, we do have a number of essential workers in Brampton that are at a greater risk. So there are workplace clusters we're aware of. But we also have, and it's quite common to have multiple families, multiple generations of the same family living together. And so when one member of the family contracts the virus, then we've had cases where as many as 15 people in the same household have contracted COVID-19. And so that creates an additional pressure.
And so when you sort of look at addressing that, what are your, I mean, you talked about testing already, obviously, but what are your options, do you think?
Well, one of the benefits of getting test results faster, like they have in Mississauga and Toronto, is that before it reaches another 15 people, and if you get the results back in 6 hours, like we could if we test, if we process tests locally, you can stop the spread much faster. In terms of outdoor gatherings, I would say this: I'm not sure we need to change the provincial rules. I'm told it's low risk outdoors, but if I'm someone right now, what are you doing holding a party or a social gathering up to 100 people? It's the wrong time, and so people should know that there should be some common sense here that people need to be more careful.
Do you think, Mayor Crombie, that there is sort of, I mean, I would say, you know, even in my own experience, it was such a tense time, right, for 3 months. And then as things got loosened a bit, you started to breathe a little bit, right? And I think people many times they'll take more calculated risks, but I can understand and even empathize a bit if they maybe push the envelope a bit too far. Are you seeing that? And what is your message to people like that who don't have any necessarily, I mean, not everyone falls in this category, but aren't ill-intentioned, but certainly don't feel the, I guess, pressure that we felt during those initial months?
Well, true, and the weather was nice, and we had all been through the lockdown, and people were craving some social activity and to see their friends once again. So we did see that uptick. We saw people having backyard barbecue parties where it was safer, and I know you may want to ask Mayor Brown. He had the opportunity to close down a few very large house parties. My bylaw enforcement didn't see such a thing, and you can ask him about those. But we did have that experience in Peel, where, as he said, there were large group gatherings. Many of them were house-related, and also the large extended families, which is very common here in Peel. So I remember 1 week, Mayor Brown, you had 45 new cases that were in 3 households, 15 per household. So we do have large extended families. My message is to people is practice the core 4. That is the basics, and that's what will protect us. We know a lot more about this virus than we did before. We know it requires us to travel. So if we all are vigilant, we keep our safe physical distance, we wear our face coverings, we wash our hands regularly, and we don't touch our faces. And if we're not feeling well, we stay home and go get tested, then we should be okay. In Mississauga, I'm very proud. We've made great strides, and I hope we continue to do so. It would be a real shame for the businesses that are opened now to have to roll that back, and I'm very hopeful that will not happen.
Mayor Brown, last word to you. Are you still seeing those house parties, or has it died down a little bit? What can you tell us?
So we had some pretty significant fines in July, fines that range up to 100,000. So that had a chilling effect. I'm told from bylaw enforcement that this past weekend there was not a single party beyond the provincial limits, and so we are seeing broader compliance. But even if you're complying within the provincial limit, I just want to stress now is not the time for large gatherings, even if they're within the provincial limit. People just need to be extra cautious, especially given the environment that we're in Peel Region right now. So I would say you may be allowed to, but you still shouldn't.
Just quickly, let me follow up with you on that. And again, from sort of talking amongst, my friends outside of journalism, outside of politics, who are kind of confused. Well, if we're not supposed to gather, why aren't the restrictions limiting us further? Do you think there would be a benefit in the province saying you just can't, 100 people can't get together?
It's a conversation that we should certainly have if we see cases coming from these outdoor gatherings. What I understand right now in Brampton, a lot of the cases are coming either from the workplace or household spread. If I hear that they're coming from backyard events, then certainly we should have that conversation.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Sorry, Mayor Crombie, you want to jump in quickly? Go for it.
Yeah, you have to remember, Vashi, of the 28 health units across the province, the experience is not similar at all. There are 21 units across the province that have no new COVID cases.
Yeah.
So you see in the larger cities where the density is higher, the greater opportunity for community transmission. So we really need to continue to be vigilant when we're out in the community, when we're gathering with our friends, and certainly in the workplace as well. Let's not forget the workplace. People are returning back to work. They've been deemed now essential and are open again. Let's make sure that they don't close. Okay. They need to practice the core four.
All right, I'll leave it there. Thanks so much for the discussion this evening. Both of you, appreciate your time as always. Mississauga Mayor Bonnie Crombie and Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.